James.
Raf.
It's been actually a really good month for the down round ETF. With the down round ETF, of course, being 80% S&P 500, as one would expect. Smart. 5% long Meta.
Yep.
5% short Tesla.
Yep.
And then 10% exotic derivatives around both Chinese economy and stock market and fourth division soccer.
That's right. So this is just an update for our shareholders. This is an update for those who are holding the down round ETF. Hopefully that's all of you.
Yeah.
We've actually moved 10% of our allocation into like a 6-dimensional futures contract on one specific lithium mine in Chile.
That's right. And the soccer team that surrounds it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like it's a 4-dimensional bet against their performance in the forthcoming Chilean football league.
Yeah.
Don't know the name of it, but we have bet against it.
Yeah, and obviously it incorporates the weather and also the yields from the mine.
So it pays, exactly. It pays out based on their performance. So we've actually, essentially, when you get down to the bottom of it, there's a lot of sort of strategic maneuvering. There's a lot of interesting contracts. But when it comes down to it, we've bet that they're going to come third. And at the same time, it's kind of like a multi. We've essentially bet that the lithium yields from this mine will be between 2 and 3 million tons over the next 8.5 years. And if we get that, we will make a 3% return. And if we don't get that, we go bankrupt.
And probably imprisoned.
And killed.
But this week, let's talk about the 5% of our portfolio allocation.
A Tesla short.
Yeah, it's short Tesla. Only at the moment, things will change.
Well, thank you.
And this is not financial advice. We haven't said this for a while.
It never is. Nothing we say is
ever financial advice, even when we're right, which is most of the time.
Which is, well, exactly. That's the level of humility we're working with, which is, it's not advice even though we're right almost 100% of the time, pending the performance of a particular Chilean football team. Well, thankfully, Elon Musk has come through and has brought a couple of down round narratives a crossover point.
Yeah.
We've been talking for many, many months about humanoid robots.
Yes.
When I say for many, many months, we did one episode about it.
Yeah.
We've been talking about self-driving cars.
Yep.
We've been talking about electric vehicles.
Yep.
We've been talking about Elon Musk being a kooky character.
Yes. AI obviously is this. We're not actually going to talk about AI this episode.
Well, there's a little bit
of here
AI.
and there,
Have you heard we've been talking about AI recently? Many of you have raised this point. But Tesla did its We Robot press conference or press event.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even say press event because I don't think the press were actually invited. I think it was mostly just like
sycophants.
It was basically, it was Tesla fanboys. But they did this presentation at the Warner Brothers studios in California.
Yeah, and they were talking robotaxis. They were talking the future of Tesla, the cars. They were talking about humanoid robots, and we're going to cover all of that.
We're going to talk about all that because, as we said, A, Tesla is an interesting company to talk about, but B, it is the culmination of a bunch of different things we've been talking about that gives you a bit of a sense of where technology is heading.
Yeah.
At least what people like Elon Musk say is the destination for technology currently.
Now, right up the top, I've remarked, I don't know if I have remarked on down rounds, but I've certainly remarked to you, you can attest to this to the listener, that any time that there's going to be a particularly poor earnings from Tesla, you can guarantee that there's going to be a crazy announcement. It's going to be like, the whole company is now focused on this huge thing. And this happened about 6 months ago with the Tesla shares were in the absolute toilet. Everyone was talking about Tesla's getting this competition from BYD, from China, from these Chinese EV companies. They're making these much cheaper EVs that still seem to be good. What's Tesla going to do to compete? Talk of Tesla we're going to have a cheaper car. We're going to be able to compete in this $30,000 range. And then Elon announced, we're not doing that. We're focused on something else. Stock price hit the floor because it was like, you need to be competing in this lower market. Earnings are about to come out. It was going to be absolute train wreck for Tesla. So he announced, we're focusing on robotaxis, autonomous taxis.
Autonomy. Well, I mean, to even zoom out a bit further, why has Tesla been asked or being pressured to release a lower cost vehicle and all these different pressures that are going on the stock. So it's something that we've talked about in Down Around, but just to give you a bit of the context. EVs, electric vehicles, very, very buzzy, and they have been for a while. But the growth has been leveling off for a little while. It's not progressing at a level analysts thought or hoped that it might be. Plus the added factor that all these other EV companies are popping up, mainly Chinese.
Yeah.
So obviously, legacy automakers are building their own EVs, and that's been chipping along. Again, Tesla has kind of been out competing a lot of these companies, but then you have the companies like BYD, like Xiaomi, and there's a handful of other Chinese EV makers who, not all of them, but a lot of them came from other areas of Chinese tech and like battery technology and whatever, are producing cars initially for the Chinese market, which is very large in terms of EVs, but are also expanding into international markets at cheaper prices than Tesla was able to do. So Tesla feels the heat in terms of, these other manufacturers nipping at their heels.
And I mean, also I'd say that like, it also appears clear that at least in the medium term, the hybrid EV is probably more likely to be the prolific form of EV. That is one that like you still use petrol in it. You're still able to power it with petrol. The petrol charges the battery so that you don't have this range anxiety. Like you don't have to rely on plugging it into an EV charger every night or, for half an hour on your ride, blah, blah, blah. Like hybrid does seem to be in the short to medium term, probably the solution. Tesla aren't making hybrids.
Yep. So what Tesla have pivoted towards, I mean, not pivoted because they've been building the fundamental technologies here for a while. They've realized that their pitch is autonomy.
Yeah.
Because
growth is slowing. Like literally growth in Tesla sales is slowing. Therefore, stock price go down.
Yep, exactly. If there's something that you could say Tesla are good at is that the software and hardware experience in terms of obviously full self-driving and the Tesla.
We're going to asterisk the full self-driving and get into that a little bit
We will,
later.
but you could still argue that like they are at the front of the game in terms of vehicular self-driving technology. To the extent that you accept that it does what it says on the tin or how effective it is.
Maybe now is a good point though. Like let's pause on like full self-driving. If you were to say a few years ago, like a car has full self-driving, would you think that meant that you had to sit there with your eyes on the road and a computer tracking and ensuring that your eyes are on the road at all time and ready to grab the steering wheel in case it veered off into the wall?
Well, totally, yeah. You would think
full self-driving is like they literally have a camera on you, making sure that you are watching the road at all times. Yeah. It's not quite the full self-driving.
I mean, you can't have a sleep in the back of the car,
or get your phone out.
Yeah, which he has actually promised for this next CyberCab generation, but we'll get to that.
But yes, they're as far as like cars where humans don't touch the wheel on a raw volume number, they would be in the lead.
Yep, absolutely.
As far as cars where you don't have to pay attention to the road, Mercedes-Benz is leading that in America at the moment. They're the only ones who are actually licensed for you to have pay no attention on certain roads in America.
Yeah,
which is why we stand.
You stand Mercedes-Benz. You stand German manufacturing.
I don't think that's a controversial opinion.
Sorry, you think the Germans can make things? Am I hearing that correctly?
I think that the German manufacturing base, combined with the USSR's primary industries and industry, could be a world-leading superpower, yes.
The USSR?
That's right. The year is 1979.
Okay, yep. The East German industrial miracle has just happened. Okay, cool. Anyway, so point being that Tesla and this whole We Robot conference that they put on the tail end of last week is part of their ongoing thing where they're like, we're not really...
We're not a car manufacturer.
We're not a car manufacturer.
We don't make cars?
We don't make cars. We make autonomous systems, and some of them happen to be vehicles.
Yeah.
Some of them happen to be electric cars. So we'll talk... So... In short, this is what they announced at their presentation last week.
We make cars?
We make cars?
Well, make cars.
Sorry, if you say we make cars, you obviously haven't got the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You've failed to grasp the enormity of our task. So they announced the CyberCab, which is their Robotaxi.
So this is the thing that pumped the stock, 6 months ago, whatever. It's like, oh, wow, new future growth driver is actually, we're going to have a Robotaxi.
Forget the cheap EV. That's bullshit. The Robotaxi.
Yeah.
Which is... As they described it back when they were first talking about it, a vehicle which is sort of like it's a ride share car, except you can purchase it for X amount of money, and it can drive around.
30 grand, they're saying.
30 grand US.
US.
You can drive
claimed, or thereabouts.
Yeah, and it drives around for you.
No gas pedals, folks. No pedals.
There's no pedals. It ferries people around all day, and then you, as the owner of the car, reap the spoils.
Yeah,
you're being paid for other people being in your car.
Number one down round theme. I'm going to put it out there. The number one down round theme: passive income. The promise of passive income.
Passive income. Earning while you do jack shit. You're sitting on the couch. You're watching Schitt's Creek or whatever it is people watch these days. Getting in RAF mode here. And while you do it, your fleet of cybercabs or robotaxis are out there earning for you.
We should say, with regards to naming convention, got to hand it to him. Elon / Tesla coined both of them, Robotaxi and CyberCab. It seemingly Robotaxi is the oeuvre,
yeah,
and CyberCab is the brand.
It's a specific product. So also, it should be noted that he talked about like the Robotaxi feature being available on traditional Tesla cars.
Yeah.
So the idea is that like your regular
Model
S or Model Y or whatever can be out there earning for you while you're not driving it. And he did that whole thing where he was like, you pay X amount of money for a car and it's only used for this small percent of the day.
Again, mega down round theme.
Yeah.
In your house, you have a hammer and you only use that hammer 0.001% of the time. What if that other 99.99% of the time it could be out there earning?
It was being utilized and it was earning. Yeah, exactly. Like
the most efficient hammer.
Totally. So he talked about this being a feature set on existing Teslas. But then also there's the CyberCab, which is only for that, or at least it's a fully self-driving vehicle. And look, you may or may not have looked at a picture of it. It looks kind of in the same genre as it's pretty much halfway between a Cybertruck
and a Model
and
S.
their current cars.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you've seen the Cybertruck with all the metal and shit, which apparently can't get wet and you can't clean it either, like all of that stuff. Imagine a kind of sleek, kind of Porsche 911 Tesla version of that, right? I feel like is a good description of it if you understand any of those references, which you should if you just
as a cultured individual.
Exactly. As a 37-year-old.
So they your average 37-year-old down round listener.
It is unclear whether the business model of the CyberCab doesn't quite roll off the tongue like Robotaxi. Robotaxi kind of rolls off the tongue. CyberCab, I think the K in the cab makes it hard to kind of just say.
I agree.
It really splits up the syllables.
Sure.
What they weren't specific about is, are they going to be the Uber, but for like autonomous driving?
I feel like it would have to be, like they would offer that software layer.
Yeah.
Like the idea would be that Tesla would have an Uber competitor or a Waymo competitor that unifies all the different navigation technologies of the Tesla network.
But then you have kind of individual small business owners who own a fleet that can kind of plug in.
Yeah, and then they clip the ticket on that and get X amount of the fare or whatever.
Yeah.
That would be, I would assume that is the business model they're thinking of.
Yeah. The number of problems with this, from my perspective, I've said this before in previous episodes, in that I personally can't make sense, and maybe I'm just too limited in my imagination. What at the end of the day, without going through all the math and the numbers, two big things are, if you have a cybercab, for example, or there's a whole fleet of cybercabs out there, do you have them for peak demand, i.e. the most busy parts of the day, when realistically you're probably also wanting to use your cab, unless you are a small business owner with a fleet of 30 cybercabs?
Well, it wasn't really clear because he talked heaps about this kind of exactly this ride sharing thing. The idea that you can be like a car landlord, who owns a slumlord for vehicles, who owns all these cybercabs. He specifically talked about the idea of being, you can be one person who owns a bunch of different cybercabs and have this business, that thrive. But
let's talk about this for a minute. Let's touch on this though.
But there was no, he didn't float the idea of like, what if you just had a cybercab that was just for you and you used it to get around places?
Yeah.
It was really only like the earning potential he was talking about.
Well, yeah, because they said like it's 0.65 cents an hour or something like
to operate it.
And there's like, God knows where that.
It was like
comes
specifically, there's no pedals. There's no anything like so. Like no one's going to own that as their personal vehicle to get around in because no one wants something that has no.
Yeah, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about that situation then, right? So you have a bunch of people with cybercabs that are going around. Let's talk purely for that business. The slumlord, cybercab owner. Or whatever. Like you cop 30 cybercabs that you keep when they're not in use somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, where do they charge? Do they automatically go to?
They just find a park
because I mean, you could kind of see the gears turning here in that it has like inductive charging.
Yeah,
you don't have to like physically plug it into the port, which makes me think that what they want is for these cars to be able to like go and charge themselves, and just constantly be out and about
at the inductive charging port. Exactly. So you just like chuck in maintenance costs, chuck in, as we've said, people vomiting in your, but presumably you pay a third party who, your new industry springs up that all they do is like clean cybercabs that kind of go there.
That's true.
Once what, like the next customer is like, there's shit and vomit and piss all over the back seat. Like I'm going to say like, this is not okay. Or I'm going to verbally tell the LLM like, hey, there's shit and piss and vomit in your back seat. You need to get yourself clean right now.
And it goes
to this place that you then need to pay as your cybercab slumlord to like keep updating the fucking cars.
Imagine you're a cybercab slumlord and you get like a push notification that it's like your cybercab that you paid 30 grand for is full of piss, vomit, and shit, and it's in Newcastle.
It's in Newcastle and it's going around in circles because someone put some traffic cones around a roundabout, and it just keeps going.
Your asset is 500 kilometers away.
You need to pay someone to remove those traffic cones, otherwise it's just going to keep burning its battery. It's out of battery now on a roundabout because someone.
The police have repossessed it
because a teen put 2 traffic cones on the exit of a roundabout.
What are you going to do about that? Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of. I mean, I get. This is going to come up a bit about this presentation. It was very much on vibes, not on details. Elon talks about the cybercab and the robo van, which we'll get to. I mean, it's kind of the same concept, but a lot of it was like him showing these like mock-ups of the city of the future, which had no parking. So much. I mean, this is classic. I mean, it's very America-centric, where it's like so much of our urban landscape is car parks, which is, I think, dramatically less true in Australia. Dramatically less.
My whole problem with that whole argument where it's like, why do we need car parks when the cars can be utilized all the time? It's like, what happens at midnight? Yeah, like, what happens in non-peak demand? Do you just have your cars burning their battery, driving in circles because they got nowhere to park?
Are they just faffing around? Yeah, exactly.
Or do they all just stop on the road? Like, what? Like, what are you thinking here?
I think they're thinking of those like weird car stacker things like they have with Volkswagen HQ. But and then he was showing lots of like, if you don't have car parks or parking lots, you can have all this beautiful green space in cities and whatever. But at no point was he ever explained like, what is the business model? How does it actually work? It was very much like, and this was the same for the robot. It was the same for everything. Very light on detail, just like future vibes. We're building the future. This is it. It's going to be autonomous vehicles and self-driving cars. Fucking out the wazoo.
And we should say, aesthetics-wise, with regards to the light on detail, it was light on detail, but like heavy on theatrics, right? Like it was in a movie studio. It was in Warner Brothers.
It was the Warner Brothers studio.
So like you could...
Bit of movie magic going on.
So if you're like a big Tesla bull who were in the audience, you could get in the cybercab and go, do you want to go to Westworld or friggin' downtown or whatever it was, and like different areas of movie world or whatever.
Yeah.
And the car would drive there. Although people were struggling because you could press go, but like then it was like, no, you need to choose where you want to go first. They were kind of struggling with the touchscreen. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But, big wow, like, okay, great. You can jump in a cybercab that's going to be the future of transportation. And before we get to the other big wows, worth touching on, a lot of people are drawing the comparison because it's fair to say investors weren't impressed with this performance.
It shaved off like 9% of the stock's value.
Yeah.
And you can say like part of that is that it had been so heavily telegraphed. It was priced in. It's not rare these days for like a big drop in the stock after a tech announcement like that.
Yeah.
As people sort of jump out. You are right. It's like it did fall precipitously.
But as I said, like if you're an actual investor, it's still unclear what the business model is around this or what the future of this looks like because it doesn't answer a lot of the questions I brought up here. Like, do you buy for peak demand or not? Blah, 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 blah. But it's worth, and a lot of people are making this comparison, comparing it to Waymo, who we've talked about.
Yeah.
I guess since you were in SF most recently.
We talked about it because, as we said, from the earliest moment in Down Run, we were like, I don't know if...
Autonomous car skeptics.
Autonomous car, we're like, don't know if this is actually... If they can get over the humps and the hard problems of this.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not perfect and it's not everywhere and what have you, but Waymo have done it.
In San Francisco, Phoenix,
parts of LA, Phoenix, they do 200,000 trips a month or whatever their current figure is, which has doubled over the past 6 months. This is something they announced recently. And just as a reminder, Waymo, subsidiary of Alphabet. Yes. So it's part of like the Google family or like equal level to Google within the Alphabet holding company.
This is where I think it's really important to like talk about. You have a really interesting thing happening right here because Waymo and Tesla are on divergent paths with regards to the technology that they want to use for autonomous cars. Waymo and Tesla used to be doing this is LiDAR, radars, sensing things around, determinative, if stop sign, then stop, mapping out all of the world and creating kind of if this, then that. I'm sure they have a bunch of AI and stuff
they do,
as well. Yeah, like, of course. But it's much more like it's a $200,000 car because of all of the friggin' LiDARs and like various things. Tesla have no LiDAR sensors, LiDAR being a radar.
And you can see it on Waymo because they look like fucking Google Street View cars. They're bulky. They've got like gear all over them. Yeah.
Tesla, on the other hand, have said, screw all that. We're ripping all that stuff out. We're purely doing cameras and AI. So it's like we have now got, due to like having Tesla, lots and lots of Teslas in the world, Tesla owners, a large percentage of them are happy to have Tesla recording their driving and what they do on the road. And then they go home at night, they charge their car and it uploads it to Tesla, who uses it to train these models that teach Teslas what a human would do in all these situations. So it basically runs through it like an AI matrix or
which
whatever.
They really lent into in this presentation because part of the presentation while Elon was talking about it is they put up on the screen like clips of the dash cam essentially, even though it's not a dash cam, it's like the inbuilt Tesla car cameras showing weird shit happening.
Yeah.
Like a person in a wheelchair crossing over a highway or like a car spinning out of control over the median strip or a bunch of different like random crap. And Elon was like, lots of weird shit happens when you drive. It's an unpredictable environment, but we have seen via our like Tesla surveillance network, essentially, more than any individual driver will ever see in terms of like weird stuff happening on the road. And all of our systems are trained on this. The CyberCab is trained on this. The RoboVan is trained on this. It knows more than you ever could.
And Waymo doesn't have all that data, is like the unspoken thing there, right? Like Alphabet, it's not Google, it's Alphabet's Waymo, doesn't have all of that. They're still friggin' programming all this in. The elephant in the room being that, like, right now, Teslas are way less safe than a Waymo on full self-driving. Tesla fanboys will be like, no, it's excellent. But, like, jump in a Tesla and with full self-driving, if you're on a 3-hour trip, you're going to have to take over the wheel at multiple points. It's still going to kill you. At this point, still, it's nowhere near. Whereas Waymo, in these highly mapped out specific environments, is great. And not only that, like I was reading a bunch of like reviews or whatever. I think I heard it on a podcast as well. Someone was talking about how when they first got into Waymo, it had to pull out of like a driveway, and it was kind of a blind driveway, and it kind of edged out the way a human did. And they realized afterwards, like, hold on, like the LiDAR sensors are on the front of the car. It could tell that there was nothing on the road, but it's still like edged out in order to make you feel comfortable, because you'd feel weird if you're sitting in the passenger seat. If it just flew out, you'd feel like unsafe. The product is the person in the car feeling like they're in a safe drive.
Yeah. And like you can see, I mean, I talked about this last time we talked about Rome because I didn't actually get in one. The reason I was actually with a coworker in San Francisco while I was there, and we were going to get one, but at the time that we did it, the wait time was like 15 minutes, and I was like, let's just get an Uber.
Yeah.
But I could see, and I saw repeatedly, Waymos being too cautious, like not making turns, and you could just see it happen, like not going around a stalled vehicle or a stopped vehicle when it absolutely could, and I'm sure that it's like sensors could see that it could.
Yeah.
Because like obviously they're insanely cautious. They don't want any accidents. Any accident right now in a self-driving vehicle is like
international news.
Disastrous.
Yeah.
But also, as you say, making sure that everyone in the car feels like, because let's be honest, and I'm sure this is what they're dealing with. The baseline experience for like a new rider in like a Waymo, it's probably fine if you've used it 20 fucking times.
Yeah.
But like for a new user, the baseline experience will be like nervous.
Yes.
You will feel like I might die.
Yeah.
Which for an onboarding experience for anything is rough.
Yeah, oh, for sure. But apparently as well, like in ride 1, it explains everything for you. It like takes you through what happens, how it works, and it's like this full, basically like guided tour. But it only happens on ride 1. So you know, it's a freaking app. You know what I mean?
There's lots of onboarding.
Yeah. But anyway, the interesting thing though, back to the dichotomy is, yes, Tesla are leaning into the problem that I've brought up now for fucking years, which is like, in order for these things to, at the end of the day, be cheaper than a Bangladeshi guy in a $15,000 Mazda, is like they have to be cheap. I say this every time. Shout out to the Bangladesh. Love Bangladesh. I hope they work their way up the test rankings. We love them, folks. Great spinners. The reality is, from a commercial perspective, okay, you can't put a $200,000 Waymo and compare it to someone who's earning less than minimum wage because of like weird arbitrages around contract law and a cheap secondhand car that is good enough to pass Uber's.
Yeah.
That's what you're competing with, right?
Yeah.
It's all well and good to be like, oh, robots are cheaper than humans. Unless they're $200,000 depreciate, you still have to maintain them. You still have to clean them. You still have all these additional costs. If one of those LiDAR detectors fucking breaks, what does that cost?
Yeah.
Compared to, there's not that much that can go that wrong in, you know, a Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
Good cars.
Which is
Toyota, great car company. Tesla have obviously gone like, okay, well, it has to be cheaper. It has to be cheaper in order for the economics to make sense at some point. So they've gone with this like, you can have this $30,000, quote unquote. We'll see if that actually ends up being the price, because, you know, $30,000 coming out in 18 months, I think was the...
Well, yeah, I mean...
in production.
To be clear, like, I mean, and Elon, he's admitted that whenever we say a date, it's incredibly aspirational and we often don't meet it.
Yes.
Which everyone often
Because he also said robotaxis in 18 months in 2019.
Yeah, well, exactly. And he talked about... He sort of crossed the wires a bit. He was like, it'll be available on existing Tesla models in 2025. Again, very aspirational. And then he was like 2026 for the CyberCab. And then he was like, before 2027. Like
in manufacture, in production.
Even in like the presentation, he was like winkingly unclear about when it was going to come out.
Yeah.
And you can assume it could probably be later than that.
Yeah. But the interesting thing being, cool. So we've got two things. Waymo going $200,000 and dot every I, cross every T. Tesla going, we're aiming for a cheap thing that actually might make, maybe, I still can't do the math on it, but it vaguely might make more economic sense to be a slumlord cab fleet guy or whatever, because it's, you know, they've come up with this number of $30,000 and 65 cents an hour or whatever it is, and you can get out your Excel spreadsheet and somehow make that work, presumably. Which is like fun to see what happens. But Tesla's version being currently shitter, but, you know, waves hands, AI, training, more NVIDIAs, Jensen getting richer, model will be better versus LiDAR.
He's really leaning
$200,000 LiDAR.
He's really leaning to, and he did in the presentation, he was really leaning to this idea of, you know, you should be able to set this to go to a destination and then you can like fall asleep in the back and then wake up at your destination, which I find really intriguing on the basis that's like, and this is something I've been thinking about. So there's a kind of network effect for safety when it comes to self-driving cars, where it's like the more self-driving cars are on the road, theoretically, the safer it gets. Because ultimately...
they're safer than humans. Regardless of it wanting to swerve into, you know, oncoming traffic or whatever, Although apparently you can't trust any of the numbers because Tesla released their own numbers.
No, totally. But even what you're really afraid of when you're in a self-driving car is not necessarily that the car is going to do something insanely off base. It's that like a human being will do something weird and the car won't know how to react to it, and you'll end up getting T-boned or smashed or whatever.
Or the moon is particularly low.
The moon is like,
and
totally.
Busting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this idea that, and the moment you take your hands off the wheel, you remove the human element. You're really trusting that autonomous system to react to inputs correctly. So when some guy falls asleep and his car crosses over into the other lane, you're really leaving it in the hands of the car to know what to do and be trained on the right data or whatever.
Yeah, or a Big Mac, paper bag rolls across the street. You just hope that the car
doesn't slam the brakes and like...
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a real issue because it's like, if you're a human being and I'm like driving my car and like that situation happens, like a person falls asleep and their car wanders across the median strip, I'm in a wreck, I get killed horribly. That's obviously very bad.
Yes.
Not a great outcome for anybody.
No.
But also like there's an element of that happened. I tried to react. Maybe it was good. Maybe I did the right thing. Maybe I didn't. I get smashed up. I die. R.I.P. me.
Yes.
But in a situation...
Tragic. You will be missed. How would I do the podcast?
How would you do a podcast if I'm in that situation? But in a situation like you're in the back of a Tesla CyberCab.
Yeah.
You're asleep in the back.
As
has been promised.
As is my right.
As is your right. You're going to your destination. Guy on the other thing falls asleep, crosses over the median strip. Tesla CyberCab doesn't know what to do. Maybe it couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like not possible for it to avoid that scenario. Smash, you're in the back, and completely with no agency, you're dead, you're killed.
Yeah.
I think the reaction to that generally, far, 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 far worse. Even though the system did nothing wrong.
Yeah, of course.
Probably unresolvable.
Totally.
The fact that you were
they're held to a significantly higher
standard. They would be, and maybe it's natural. This idea that it's like, well, if I was behind the wheel, I could have escaped that. But because I was like the slave to this machine.
Yeah. This is a question that you, me, and Mark DeStefano, who we might have on the podcast again soon to talk other things. We brought this up, 18 months ago or something like that?
Yeah.
It was the question, what are we going to see in Sydney, specifically, once a day first? Let's revisit this question. Are we going to see a fully autonomous car with no driver or AR? Or someone wearing an AR device?
I actually think that it's kind of down to the wire.
It's still down to the wire. It was a great question back then. It's still a great question now.
Well, back then we were like,
we
AR.
all went AR, which is interesting because, like, I don't even know what... This is before the friggin' Vision Pro.
No, but people were still talking about it. And, like, I'm pretty sure the Snapchat spectacles were a thing. They were.
Yeah.
Like, they were early.
But, like...
And, like, Google Glass, obviously,
Google Glass had
been
happened,
in the past.
But even Meta Ray-Bans, I don't think...
No, it was well before that. But, yeah, I mean...
But we all went AR.
Yeah, no, it is interesting.
I think I'm going to stick with AR. It's closer because it's like if Alphabet decide that Sydney's their next city, well, obviously we're fucked. If they decide it's Melbourne, like could be friggin'... Then it's back on AR, you know what I mean? This is the problem with the question.
I mean, there's people wearing Meta Ray-Bans, although it's not
That's not AR. No. An AR has to have...
Okay, it has to be Orion.
Well, Orion-ish. It has to have some kind of projection in the lenses. And there are other AR things around.
Orion is like 3 years away, right?
Yes.
It's 3 years away.
Yeah, but there are other... You can buy GoFundMe... Not GoFundMe.
Okay, you can buy the shit ones. But like, let's assume that there's basically going to be a hard limit.
Yeah.
Because once Meta releases that...
That's it.
People will have it.
People will see it.
And you'll see it on a semi-regular basis.
Yes.
I think that's like, you'll see at least one a day.
That said, how often do you see, or do you notice at least, the Meta Ray-Bans right now, which is selling pretty well? I don't notice them ever.
That's true. But I think if it's going to be as chunky...
I'm going to cop the Meta ARs. Like there's absolutely zero chance that I don't buy them.
Yeah. But if there's an Orion and they're as visibly chunky... You might know them.
It is chunky. This is the thing. I said the same thing with the Meta Ray-Bans and the AI, but then I tried them on and I was like, I can't be wearing glasses with cameras on it. I just can't do that. I can't do it. So I said this before, and hands up, I admit, I said I was going to do something and I did not follow through. Once I put them on my head, I was like, I just can't do it.
It's plausible that okay, let's say 3 years is when Meta releases it. It's plausible that Apple's announced something by then.
Yeah.
I reckon 3 years is probably a hard limit before you start seeing them on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah.
And then, so it's really just a question. And because the technology exists for self-driving vehicles,
yeah,
does Waymo appear in Sydney over the next 3 years? That's a pretty tight timeline, but I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility.
Let me be clear as well about Waymo. Waymo could not exist outside of Alphabet.
Because it's pumping a vast amount of money.
Yeah. It's costing an absolutely insane amount of money. In that investors would not deal with
startup.
Yeah, as a startup, no one is pumping the billions and billions of dollars it must cost for Waymo, who, once again, it is unclear exactly what the business model is. Whether they'll ever make money.
Plus the fact they're obviously relying on Google's mapping infrastructure and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And all the crowdsourced kind of data off that.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's worth flagging that it's like, it's unclear whether Waymo could or exist as a standalone business ever.
Yeah, I mean, they benefit from the fact. But it's also funny that, I mean, we're talking about it being part of Alphabet, but I feel like the average person has no fucking idea.
Yeah.
That like a company associated with Google or whatever is actually the ones that are behind self-driving cars and are furthest along.
Yeah.
By far, because they actually have a product that people can buy.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff. Anyway, we've talked about self-driving cars a lot. We should move on to talk about
the other fantastic thing that, was happening in Westworld or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Optimus, which has been talked about for a few years. We talked about it during our humanoid robot episode. But they got another showcase at this Tesla event. The Optimus humanoid robot, which Elon talked about in the sense of like, one day you're going to have...
It's going to teach your kid math.
No
more school.
It's going to look after your kids. It's going to serve you drinks.
Yeah.
It's going to do household tasks like folding T-shirts or whatever. It's the classic down round thesis. Well, not even thesis. It was like, what if there was a guy in your house?
It was crazy. You pointed this out. It's crazy how hard they leaned into, what if there's another guy in your house?
What if there's a dude in your house? Like, they had fucking photos of... They even showed... They did the use case where it's like a bunch of people sitting out on a deck
and
like
laughing,
like having a great time, and the robot is there pouring them fucking gin and sodas or whatever.
But it's like one of the few use cases we could come up with is one of the few use cases they could come up with.
One of the highest market cap companies in the world went with. But like the most incredible thing, and this made me go like, they'd be listening to Down Around, is because like they showed this robot doing it. And then the clip finished with the robot kind of like straightening up and just sort of like hanging there while they were drinking and talking. And they were like, yes, they followed through with like the guy in your house thesis. Just this weird guy who's there.
Just got this guy there. The thing I will say, that my key takeaway from the Tesla event was like, not a lot of people walked away with honor.
A very dishonorable presentation.
Well, with regards to the influencers and Tesla bulls and whatnot who were there. Because the regular media, the lamestream media, the MSM was not invited.
That's it. It was mostly Tesla superfans who were there, yes, and then investors and what have you. But basically what they did, Elon got up, he was like, we've made this progress in Optimus. He made, again, these big, bold statements where he was like, this is going to be the most consequential, I think he literally said like the most important product ever.
Mm.
And he talked about it in the same way. This is
fire. He didn't say that, but I would have said that.
I think he did describe it as sick.
This is fire. This is the wheel.
Yeah. He was like, this will, as you said, look after your kids, make your meals, fold your T-shirts, all this kind of crap.
Didn't say clean your cat litter, did it?
Didn't come up. But I think it's safe to say it was implied. And then he was like, and now we're going to look at it. And he actually specifically said, now look at this gazebo. And he pointed to a gazebo that was in the middle of the crowd. And, they played Daft Punk, Robot Rock, a whole bunch of robots doing the robot. And then he was like, and these robots are going to be hanging out with you while you continue to have a good time. They're going to be serving you drinks. Be nice to them. So it was a real kind of like, humanoid robots are here. We have solved the problem.
Welcome the robots amongst humans.
They had robots in cowboy hats and aprons serving beers, and then people could talk to them. And what became, this
is the unbecoming bit.
This is the unbecoming bit, because all the Tesla super fans were like, oh my God, they have fucking solved it.
Well, yeah, exactly. We have humanoid autonomous robots due to AI and technology.
Correct. But it became apparent.
We have a man computer.
The computer man, we invented him. And, reports from people that were there on the ground, plus some like media stuff afterwards, it became clear that, there was a bit of movie magic fluffing, let's say, of the experience.
That's being very kind. Movie magic. I don't know the industry terms, so maybe that's common parlance around your way.
It's movie magic.
A remote control bloke with a walkie-talkie.
Well, pretty much, yeah. I mean, like... Yeah,
let's be frank. The movements looked pretty cool.
I think if you want to be really, really generous to what Tesla was saying, they were like, that's basically what they were talking about. They were like, this robot has like significant finger articulation.
It's got dexterity.
It's got the dexterity to hold a beer, pull the tap, fill the beer, hand it to you in a way that's relatively credible.
A little scary to observe. Like if you're watching it, you're not as sure of it than, a typical pub. However, it's pouring a beer, it's handing it to you. Yeah. That's a great start.
It's great. I think there's something lost in the experience when it's not like some guy's like, yeah, so what are you after, mate? And you're like, oh, can I grab a Newtowner?
A schooner of Newtown. And it's pints for schooner prices. I guess make it a pint then.
Yeah, can I have a pint? And he's like, yeah, great. And then he's like pouring it slowly and he goes, how's it going? And you're like, yeah, you good? Long shift? And he's like, I just started. And then there's sort of dead air for a bit. And then he slides it over and he goes, that'll be $14. You're like, I thought you said it was pints for schooner prices. And he was like, yeah, it's $14. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's experience you can't get with a robot.
Yeah. You cannot replicate that.
You can't replicate that. But anyway, the robots were having conversations with people.
Sorry, just funny thing to say.
The robots were talking to people, but it seems a lot of the Tesla superfans seem to have convinced themselves that it was like an LLM they were having conversations with.
Yeah.
I saw, for my sins.
So the most idiotic and I guess most optimistic take that people thought were the goal, right? The goal is you have this autonomous thing that's powered by AI and whatnot, and it walks around and interacts, and you can direct it to do things and blah, blah, blah. That obviously doesn't exist.
That is not even close to being true. But a bunch of these, like the Tesla Ultra fans, I mean, I don't know the extent to which they actually believe that, or whether they were just like really happy to be part of the Tesla marketing apparatus.
Yeah, and so allegedly, very unclear exactly like what communication was put out there. But it seems to me like, for the most part, the majority of people understood that, at the very least, the robots were remote controlled. Or there are people controlling them with a remote control.
Yeah, or like through... I mean, it's not 100% clear what they were doing or how they were doing it, but people were posting footage of like the... kind of like a VR motion capture suit that they have, like a warehouse of people doing it. But I think the clips they were showing from that were from like the training phase of when they were actually teaching the robot the movements to use. But it was very clear it was some sort of remote operation, and also there were people distantly controlling these robots and talking through them.
Yeah. Because the flip side was then people were like, yes, the robot's movements were remote controlled, but the voice interaction was an LLM and like AI interaction. It's like, no, that is very clear from every single video, including the ones that you're showing us as proof of it being AI. Is like, that is quite obviously like a dude with a walkie-talkie.
That's a dude. Like, it sounds like, if you listen to our ChatGPT voice mode episode, you will know that like OpenAI has done some very cool stuff in this space. It sounds really credible.
Yeah, Google's done some great stuff with Notebook LLM and making podcasts. It takes 10 minutes to, sort it out.
It sounds credible, but then when you hear an actual person talking, you realize like, oh, it's actually not that close.
Yeah.
Like a regular...
Back to back.
It's not that close. Yeah. And like when you heard these robots, quote unquote, talking,
it was very obvious.
It was literally like
a dude.
It was a guy with like a Hispanic accent being like, "Oh yeah, man, it's great to be here today."
And like when they're like the incredulous like doe-eyed, like Tesla bull, like TSA, like Elon Stan, is their handle on Twitter, or like, and Robot, what is one thing that you hope to learn? And they're like, I guess to be more like you.
Yeah.
They're like, whoa.
Yeah.
The power of computer, whoa.
Yeah, totally. And then, like, exactly.
Some actor.
And then there was even a clip of a guy being like, how much of this is AI, or how much of this is robot? And the guy being like, well, I can't tell you how much it is. You guess you'll have to find out. And I was like, this is literally like talking to fucking Goofy at Disney World.
Exactly. It's like literally out of work actors.
And all of this is fine. Because as you said, it being able to hold a beer and do all those kind of actions, impressive. Like, they've done something. Isn't an absolute insane upward step change over what fucking
Boston Dynamics,
or like the Honda fucking Asimo or whatever it was doing? I don't know, but it's certainly cool, and they're moving towards some ultimate destination.
And they're moving towards another dude in your house.
Yeah, having a guy in your house.
The $30,000 guy in your house, giving you a drink and then just standing there,
paying $30,000 for a guy in your house.
Yeah, to just stand like remarkably still,
but like. Sorry, to believe that for whatever reason that they have accelerated insanely far beyond what every company has done.
Yeah. And also not mention that really in the keynote. Like, it was like a big reveal, like, just for you. Like, whoa, he's done it. Like, there would have been some moronic conversations going on out there at Westworld.
Oh, God, I would, to be a fly on the wall, as these people heard, as you said, some, like, Tesla employee being like,
it's so realistic. It even says and it gets vaguely confused when it can't hear our slurring questions.
Yeah, I'm a robot, man. It's crazy. And then this guy who has like a Twitter account called like Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley is like, my mind is blown. Anyway, it's power to them.
Yeah, good on him.
Interesting that, again, they're leaning into this. This is part of the Tesla autonomy pitch.
Yeah,
they've certainly kicked the tin along from where they were, and you can see the pieces are coming together. And like, if I'm being really generous to the way they were pitching it, it's like Elon has the XAI Grok stuff going on, and with the amount of training resources he has allocated for that, it sounds like Grok and XAI have built a pretty extraordinary.
It's got to get there soon because they have a fuckload of graphics cards.
So if you have,
they got like the third most in the world or something, right?
So these are the pieces. If you have a robot that does have like the ability to sort of like, again, articulate motion, like it's got a hand that can do full range of motion and do whatever.
I wouldn't say. Are they going to be able to bowl leg spin, for example?
No, probably not. Exactly. And is it going to be able to throw it down on the D floor?
But more importantly, like, is it going to be able to literally fold your washing or like?
I mean,
this kind of crap. I'm still bearish on like the idea of a humanoid robot doing most things rather than discrete objects that do. No. But whatever, you all know that if you listen to
totally. But also, like, I can see the pieces there.
Yeah,
you've got a robot that can do movements.
Yeah,
and like fairly minute kind of movements, maybe one day. That plus an LLM for speech.
Yeah.
I think you could, like, right now, today.
And AI for, like, visual recognition and...
Visual recognition sort of stuff.
Like understanding
an AI that's trained on millions and millions of hours of people doing all different kinds of movements.
Yeah.
Folding T-shirts, pouring drinks,
changing
whatever.
kitty litters.
Changing kitty litter.
So that yes, you can see one day we will spend 40 grand
on a robot that does that stuff, maybe okay, and is again a guy in your house,
as opposed to like your Brazilian housekeeper who comes over once a week and also does that stuff.
Well, we're talking exactly. At the end of the day, can you beat a Brazilian housekeeper?
Can you beat a Brazilian housekeeper and a Bangladeshi Uber
driver? And a Bangladeshi Uber driver? That is ultimately what is being competed against.
Now that presumably all the analysts in all the big hedge funds or whatever are doing that calculus in the spreadsheet right now.
Totally. Well, actually, we've got a real example of this, which is OpenAI released like the API level. You can now do basically the ChatGPT voice mode from the OpenAI API, right? And the cost that it comes down to is essentially, if you've got it constantly going, it's like $15 an hour. And then there's people being like, I can get you like a Filipino call center worker for like 6.
And still take a margin.
So it's like, that is literally, I mean, it's very grim, but it's also true. These are the comparisons that are being run. Extremely low wage human workers.
Yeah.
Who are being, exploited.
This is what I keep saying. Like, that is and don't get me wrong, like, yes, robots can work 24 hours a day. They can fold washing 24 hours a day. But, in enterprise context or whatever, yes, there's all that. And yes, the whole thing with Moore's law computation is that the cost is driven down. Presumably, like, again, this comes back to, like, this is why people are talking about nuclear and, like, solar and energy.
What?
Nuclear. Nuclear.
Yeah, we got roasted for that one, but
nuclear.
Right.
Because, again, another input is like, to be cheaper than humans, we're going to need our electricity costs to come down a significant amount. This is why you hear so much friggin' buzz around this kind of stuff as well. But at the end of the day, that is what, like, from a business perspective, it's competing with. That's what the autonomous cars are competing with. It's what friggin' humanoid robots are competing with. That's what AI customer service agents are competing with.
It's always been muscled up against the lowest wage workers in the lowest wage market that can sustain that kind of work.
Because that's what we've been doing for the past 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And the world is shaped around that. That's why there's so many English speakers all around the world, because you could make a better wage in a lot of those countries purely being able to speak English so that you could be the source of the outsource. Now it's like, we need to make a robot that's cheaper than that. Presumably one day, but like, cool world.
Yeah, fuck, cool world. The pieces are coming together, and I hate to see it.
If you're listening to this, you are not subscribed to Down Round Premium. If you were subscribed to Down Round Premium, you would be getting a second episode a week. You wouldn't be hearing this. You wouldn't be hearing any other ads either. If you go to downround.net, you can sign up right now, get access to the whole back catalogue, extra episode a week, no ads, $7 a month. Pretty good deal, James.
Spectacular deal, Ralph.